Hi, everybody. I'm glad I could join you. I did make a career change, rather drastic one, a few months ago. So one of the things that I miss most about the thing that I used to do for many years was that I don't get to do these sorts of things anymore because it has nothing to do with my current life. As a student. So it was very nice when Greg got in touch and said, hey, it'd be great if you could join us at droidcon. I'm like, well, I don't write code anymore, so how is that going to work? I have nothing to teach you. I'm not working on this tech anymore. So this is going to be a non-educational talk. Ironically, it's probably the most keynote that I will ever give. I used to do keynotes that were basically tech talks. And then they would just call them a keynote. But today I'm going to step up a little bit. I'm not going to talk about technical details. Instead, I'm going to talk about this thing that I've had for the last many, many decades called a career. When I left Google, I told a friend of mine, Dan Sandler, who runs the System UI team, I said I was on the way out the door, and he said, oh, that's too bad. Maybe he said that. He probably wasn't serious, but he said, oh, have you considered doing a last lecture? So we have a tradition of last lecture in some organizations. There's some of these on YouTube. I think there's a very famous one by an instructor, a professor at MIT who did a last lecture. And this happened at a college that I was at years ago where someone will be on the way out and they'll sort of collect their thoughts and say, here's some things that I learned. And it doesn't even necessarily relate to their field. And I thought, well, in my case, well, I'm not sure what's going on here. In my case, I have been doing tech for almost 35 years, and it turns out that after working in the field for that long, you sort of accumulate a lot of opinions. I'm an opinionated person to begin with, and so I just started writing down. After Dan said this, I thought, well, nobody in Google wants this because they're all too busy writing and checking in code. But maybe I could think about what are some of the lessons that I learned that seem to work for me and see if that's interesting. Now, I should also point out that this works for me. Everybody's personality and environment and situation and desires and career path is completely unique. I can't say that the things that worked for me would actually work for anybody that's not me, but I can say that I have opinions on it. So I'm happy to share those and see if they are interesting or useful at all. And eventually we're going to get to the slides and then we're going to see, okay, I think we're almost there. There's a slide on the left side, and then there's a black area on the right side, which should take the place of that. All right. So what do we think?
We show no notes or notes.
Oh, okay. Who wants to see my speaker notes? I think I'm the only one. So let's not show the speaker notes. Let's just do the other thing. All right. So you could unplug the second display, maybe? Would that work? Again, we have 1,000 engineers in the room. Would everybody please shout out suggestions for how we should fix this technical glitch? Perfect. Thank you. This worked like 20 minutes ago. This is great. All right. If I hold the laptop up and then drip the bits down into the HDMI cable, is that going to work better? Yep. Okay. That picture is called Moment of Failure.
Can you live without the notes?
Yeah. We'll live without notes. I have no idea how this is going to go, which makes it perfect for one of my talks. All right. And we're going to quickly switch in the back, and then we're ready. Oh my God, the tension is killing me. These slides are going to be such a disappointment when they finally appear. I just want to point out on this slide, I can't imagine why Mastodon hasn't taken off in such a big way. because that's how many characters you have to type to tell them where to find you on Mastodon. But anyway, those are the social media places where you can find me. If you're interested, let's get on with this lecture and talk about my tech career, which is now over. So first of all, I want to say hello to Berlin. I want to thank you for having me back. When I came before, it was, I think, two and a half years ago, 2 droidcon Berlins ago, as we came out of pandemic. It was fantastic to come to the conference. I believe it was in November, which meant that outside it was wet and it was gray and it was cold and it was kind of miserable, and it's really nice to be in Berlin in July and experience a different kind of Berlin that's very welcoming and beautiful. So that's great. Thanks. It's lovely to be in Berlin again. Okay, so a lot of conferences want you to have an about the speaker slide, which is usually the first slide that I delete from the template. But in this case, if anybody doesn't know who I am, it's good to have a little bit of context. I've been a graphics programmer since I got out of grad school in 1992. That is basically everything that I've done since then. I am currently a student in comedy screenwriting. Wait, where did that? Here we go. So on my badge, it says student. When I got it from Eduardo at the sign-in, he looked at this and he said, there's an error here, so we'll need to reprint this later because it says student. I'm like, no, I put that there. I meant to put that there. When I tell people in Chicago that I moved to Chicago to go to school, they say, oh, what do you teach? No, I'm a student. I don't know why you're guessing that I'm a professor. Maybe it's these gray highlights that I add to my brown hair. Anyway, so I am currently a student in a comedy screenwriting program in Chicago, and where this goes in the future, I have no idea. I have one more year of this program. It's pretty fun so far. It's certainly a nice left turn. I believe one of the points that I'll make a little bit later on is I believe heavily in change in your career, in trying new things, and I can't think of a bigger change than going from programming and management and leadership in the tech community into comedy screenwriting, which is, I hope, the worst financial decision that I will ever make, but it's certainly an interesting change. So let's go quickly. This is just to set a little bit of context. So in 1987, I graduated undergrad. I went to work for a company that published law books, and they had a data network. And this is many years before the internet. So I was a data analyst and network analyst. I worked with spreadsheets. Incredibly dull, very, very boring job. And it made me step back and say, okay, well, I hate this. What are things that I could do for a career instead? And I remembered a computer graphics course that I had in undergrad. And I said, well, I need to learn more about that so I could work in that field. I go to grad school for a couple of years. I come out. I work in a startup that blows up in my face about a year later, and then I go to work for Sun Microsystems. I moved to Silicon Valley because if you're looking for a tech job and you're on the West Coast, it kind of makes sense to do that. I worked for Sun, fantastic engineering-driven organization for a while, for a couple of years, and then I went into contracting with a couple of friends, worked for various companies, including Sun and some other small and big firms there. I worked at a dot-com startup in the early days of the dot-com thing. That was some fun and also some death marches. I did a bunch of contracting when they sold off to Microsoft, and a bunch of people moved to Seattle, and I did not. I worked for a chip startup. This is when there were many 3D chips just sort of coming into being before NVIDIA sort of killed the entire field. I worked for Sun again as a contractor and then a full-time employee for about 8 years total. Then I joined Adobe for about 2.5 years and worked on Flex, which is sort of a programming layer on top of the Flash rendering engine. And then I joined the Android team at Google, and that's basically the last thing that I did. So I was there since mid-2010 for almost 14 years, and now we're here. So I'm going to go through and just sort of give you random points that I thought of when I thought about the things that worked for me in my career. One is that any job can be valuable. It's how you deal with that information. As I said, the first job that I had out of undergrad, I hated it. I love the people there. I have some very good friends still from that company, but the management all the way up did not have any respect for them. The kinds of work that we did, the attitude, I would work with people and I'd say, okay, here's what went wrong. And they're like, no, don't tell me, just tell me what the answer is. I'm like, I don't want to work with people who do not care, right? Just the entire environment was horrible. On the other hand, The thing that it did for me was it made me step back and say, okay, this is really bad. I don't want to stay here. What is it that I want to do instead? So even this bad job that I did not want was great for me as a motivator to figure out what I actually wanted to do for my career and my life instead, which has led in a lot more positive directions. If the job had been a little bit better and been okay, then maybe I would still be there and life would not have been as interesting. So anything, any job, any environment may be miserable, but there are still things that you can learn from it. You can learn technical skills, maybe you can move around, you can network, you can meet people, you can take away whatever you need to from that job to then use later at jobs that you may work that you may enjoy better than that. All right, I would say, so all of the pictures here came from, like all I had was black text on white backgrounds until yesterday, and I thought, I don't know, people like pictures, so I'll just do some searches in my Google Photos and pull things up. So I typed in the keyword passion into Google Photos, and it came up with this conduit frame. So apparently this is passion, as defined by Google Photos. I would say it's important to figure out what it is you care about, right? We spend our entire working lives mostly at work, right? So we're working for 8, 10, 12 hours a day. You factor in, commutes. We're spending most of our waking hours doing this thing. Wouldn't it be nice if we actually enjoyed that thing? So if you can figure out the things that you're excited about, for me, it was computer graphics programming. It was the excitement of combining math and programming and seeing the result on the screen, which I find still just fascinating to this day, which drove me through all of the jobs until I left my last job in March. So if you can figure out the things that excite you, that's good, because you're gonna spend most of your waking hours doing this more than with friends, with family, with doing your hobbies and your outside interests. So why not actually try to enjoy them? And then it's not even like work anymore. You're just having fun and somebody happens to pay you for it. Don't tell the executives. Yeah, we do it for free, but don't let them know that. Enjoy every day. As I said, like if you can find that passion, then you can find what it is you actually want to do, and then it's not even like work at all. Education is kind of an interesting topic in CS. I learned a lot about this in doing the research for the Androids book, where there is, I think, like we're a highly qualified field in general. Obviously, this is not something you just sort of pick up on the playground and you run with, but you can pick up enough information on your own to actually be a serious programmer that doesn't need a specific degree from a specific school. Back in the early days of Google, they really looked for pedigreed people that came out of engineering programs in schools that they knew. Those were the people that would make it through the recruiter screening process and get interviews, and then they would answer the questions about algorithms, like this whole process, but they did kind of expect you to come from the MITs of the world. But a lot of the Android people did not. Not only did they not come from the pedigreed institutions like that, a lot of them didn't even have a college degree to begin with. One of the people on Android in the early days didn't even have a high school degree, and it did not matter. What matters with education is two things. One is, do you know the thing? So I went back to grad school not because I wanted a master's degree, that is irrelevant, but because I realized I want to do computer graphics and I need to know more about the specifics of how to do that. So I need to study it for a couple of years so that I actually have those skills. And then the second reason is you need to convince people that you have those skills. Once you work in the field, then you have a way to convince people. You've had these jobs with these companies, you can demonstrate the things that you've done, you can sit through the interview and answer those questions, and then people understand that it doesn't matter where you went to school, you actually have the right skills for them. But the trick is, how do you get those jobs to get the skills without the school? So sometimes you need school to get there, and that's great, but you don't necessarily need a degree, certainly in the long run. There is this interesting dichotomy in our field where it's really about what you know and being able to demonstrate what you know. I found that it's really important to get along with people. I think there's a feeling in our engineering community that it's really important to be the smartest person in the room and to demonstrate that. And I think the longer I spent in my career and working with other people, the more important it was to actually work with people who were pleasant, right? If you're the smartest person in the room and nobody wants to work with you, then nobody wants to work with you. You're not going to get those jobs, or you're not going to keep them, because it's unpleasant to be around you. I'm not saying you, I'm saying other people. Like, just be easy to get along with. It's so important. I know senior hiring managers and directors of organizations who have come to the same realization that they don't necessarily want the smartest person. It's way more important to have smart people who actually work with a team, because all of our products are so complex that we generally will work on teams to deliver them. Unless you're sitting in your basement working alone on your own product, you actually need to work with other people. So if you're really smart, but nobody wants to work with you, you're not of benefit to the organization. I worked in a couple of organizations with some people that were like highly intelligent, really hardworking, that attract other people around them, and they would completely obliterate the rest of the organization because they didn't care about them. They were unpleasant to work in the larger sense for the bigger team, and they kind of destroyed the software organizations around them. It was fascinating to see, like, yes, that person was really amazing, but you know what? The other 20 people that just quit were more amazing than they were, and it's unfortunate that that happened. It's also important to know your team. One of the things that I realized coming out of the COVID thing was that although I love my code and I love working on the tech and I love the companies that I work for, what I'm really here for in all of these jobs is the people that I work with, right? As I said, we're spending most of our waking hours there. This really is a family that we're there, and it's temporary, right? You're gonna work with them for a year, 2 years, 5 years, whatever it is, but those people are really important. So it's important to actually get to know them, because you are going to need them. You're going to learn from them, they're going to learn from you. You're going to review their code, and likewise, they're going to review yours. And so get to know them a little bit. Bring in some donuts, have a coffee, have some lunch. I think, again, there's this feeling that we have in the engineering community of, I do my thing here. I sit at, maybe I'm a remote worker and I'm at home and I'm just, checking in the code and I'm really effective at that. But it is a team effort, and the better you know your team, the better it is in general. I think, like, we're engineers, we don't get into this field because of our people skills, maybe, but it turns out in the long run, those are actually pretty important for delivering products that are a collection of the capabilities of everybody that worked on it, and not just individuals. I originally said be honest here, and that's not true. I think we all try to be honest in general. I think it's not necessarily obvious that we should be candid and transparent about the things that we don't know. I think when people, especially when you're newer in your career, you feel like, well, I have to be, the smartest person in the room, and I have to know all these things. And if I don't know a thing, I can't let people know it because they'll use it. It's a weakness. No. We all realize that everybody here has weaknesses and strengths. We're all here because we're really good at some things, but that doesn't mean that we're all really good at all things. We cannot be. It's too huge a field. It's too big a domain for us to know everything. So just admit when you don't know things, because that's when you learn, right? I've had people, when I give talks about giving talks, people will say, well, what do you do when someone in the audience asks a question that you don't know the answer to? Like, be honest. Say, yeah, I don't know the answer to that. And I have never caught flack for that attitude, because they understand that there are some things that I know. I just don't happen to know the thing that they asked about, right? So be honest. That's where the education comes from. And that's also where the credibility comes from, because everybody knows that you're telling the truth and they can trust you now, instead of realizing sometime later on they pretended they knew what they were doing, but in fact they didn't. Change is good. I think this is probably the most important element of all the thoughts that I've had here, is that it's good to try new things in a few different ways. One is that through change, we learn what it is we want to do, right? If you're always working on the same thing, how do you know that that other thing over there actually would have been more interesting, or would have played to your skill set more, or would have broadened your capabilities and your potential and opportunities in your career? So it's good to actually try new things. Maybe try something similar over there, maybe try something completely different. I'm not recommending that people quit their engineering job and go into writing, because I think that is a horrible career decision in general for engineers. But I am recommending that you try other things in your domain. If you're enjoying this, okay, try some other things and see if there's other things to enjoy. This includes trying things like management. It includes things like when I was at Google, I did engineering for a while, and then I did management for a while, enjoyed all of that, and then I went over to developer relations, and I did pure outreach for a couple of years, and I came back and I did some more engineering. And it was through trying out new groups and new skills that I realized what it was that I wanted to do more of and less of, and just also just getting more experiences in general. Another reason to try the change thing is I've done this several times through my career. This is sort of why I put up that timeline to show all of the different kinds of things that I've tried that I would recommend to other people. It reboots your brain. Which is really good for a couple of things. One is that it makes you learn new things, and it makes sure that your brain is still capable of doing that, but more importantly, it builds the confidence that you can. So in the future, maybe your company goes away and you need to find a new job, or this position is eliminated, or you're simply bored and you want to do something else. It's good to have the confidence in the back of your mind that you can. Otherwise, like if you get a job and you stay at the job and it's not great, but you don't feel like moving, and then 15 years later, maybe you feel like you can't move, right? I have friends and family that sort of got in this position where they ended up working in a job that they really didn't like, but many, many years later, they felt like they couldn't leave it because that was the only thing they were an expert in, and they didn't have the confidence to do anything else. So I would actually recommend not just change is good and change things occasionally, but maybe try it early on just to convince yourself that it's possible. Every job that I took, like going to Adobe, going to Sun, doing some contracting, like doing all these random things, every one of those was difficult. I would go through a period of self-confidence, of lack of self-confidence as I started because I don't know anything here. So I joined Adobe. I had been working on Java, Swing, Java 2D for a while. I went there, I needed to learn ActionScript. I needed to learn the Flash rendering engine, the design tools for using all that stuff. I needed to learn Flex, this language that we were working on. We were working on a new UI toolkit and framework for this thing, like all of this new stuff. And I couldn't be productive on day one or day two or week two. It took me a while to actually spin up on that. And of course, you go through this lack of confidence, wondering, oh, is this going to work? But when you actually get there, and you will, then it builds the confidence and that feeling in the back of your mind like, oh, I can do this. So if I need to do this in the future, I can do it again. So it's important to sort of build that in early so that when you need to do it later on in life, you know that you can. So imposter syndrome, I think this has made a lot of waves in the last few years. I assume everybody in here knows what this is now, and maybe you feel it. I've felt this forever. It was interesting to me on the tour at Google on my first day in 2010, someone finally put a label to it, which helped because I understood, A, what this thing was, and somebody defined exactly what it was, which I'm gonna mess up now, but it's basically the feeling that everybody around me is better than me, and I feel very insecure, right? I've always felt it, but they put a label to it, and also putting a label to it was important because you understand other people feel this as well. In fact, people feel it more like the better institution you go to grad school, you go to some of these big name companies that hire all these smart people working really hard, like you're gonna feel it more and more. You earned a place there, and yet like I would always feel like, did I really? Or did they just make a mistake? Like I can't ever lead this company because I can never get back in. But just the realization that other people feel it helped me understand, like it doesn't erase this from me, but at least it makes me understand and accept it and just say, okay, well, this is a thing, I'm gonna feel it, but it's okay. I actually am okay at doing my job anyway, so I'll just focus on the work instead. Stage time, so maybe you don't want to do this thing. I really enjoy this. I like being on a stage. There's no feeling like having a microphone and having 1,000 people looking at you while you can't get your slides up on the screen. There's an adrenaline and an energy that I really enjoy, and I enjoy interacting with people, whether it's comedy or tech or whatever it is. But this is not for everybody. But I would say that all of us need the ability to communicate and articulate clearly in our jobs, whether that is to colleagues, whether it's to bosses, to executives, whether you need to give a tech talk, whether you need to give a sales presentation, whatever it is. So it's important to actually develop the skills so that when you need to do it, you are comfortable enough to do it. So I would recommend that people practice this and develop this as a skill. As I said, like, you don't need to do it at the level where you're doing big talks to large groups of people, but at least the ability to stand up in front of strangers and give a presentation, or even people that you know in a work context, and give a presentation without getting really nervous, I think is important. Okay, caveat, I still get nervous, right? I think nerves when you're giving a talk, when people are looking at you and expecting you to actually say something to them, like, I can't get rid of the nerves there. What you do is you get used to those. And the way that you get used to that is by practicing. And I don't mean practicing like, okay, so sign up for droidcon and give a talk next year. More that you can just register for a tech talk at work. You can say, well, I just learned this new technology and it'd be good if other people understood it. Okay, give a talk on that. Talk at your group meeting. Give a tech talk to the overall department. Register for a local meetup. Meetups are always looking for people to talk about new technologies. They love to have speakers there, so sign up for some of those. There's also outside of tech. I actually find that the improv classes I've taken has made me a better technical speaker than most of the tech stuff that I've done, just because it builds the confidence about being on stage and things going wrong, like the slides not coming up, and knowing that it's okay. Just the experience of getting up and doing this thing over and over builds the confidence that you can do this and you probably won't die. And if you do, you won't be around to suffer from it anyway. So what does it really matter? Get up there and try. I found it personally important to be in a tech hub. I worked in Silicon Valley. I wouldn't say everybody needs to go to Silicon Valley. I think there are a lot of problems with Silicon Valley, including, the crowds and the cost of living and all that stuff. But I did find it helpful to be in a hub where there were opportunities, not just at the company where I happened to be working at that time, for two reasons. One is that you may want to make a change, and there are other options. I could walk down the street and work for a competitor to this company and do similar things with a similarly good job, and it was great to have those opportunities. Even if I didn't take advantage of them, it was nice to know that they were there and there were always other options going around. One of the reasons I changed jobs so many times was because I would hear of a new opportunity through friends, and then I would look into it and say, okay, well that looks interesting and it looks like skills and experiences that I should develop, so why don't I go do that thing? If you're working in a city or a location with an interesting job, you're kind of stuck. If you want to do something else, you're gonna need to move, unless you're in the remote work situation, which is a whole other thing. Just the ability to have other options there, I think, is important. The other is, the flip side is, the companies have to work harder to make you happy, because they realize that at any time, you could go work for their competitor. This is why the benefits and perks, at least traditionally in Silicon Valley, tend to be pretty good, because if they don't make you happy, why are you here? Like, there's an element of golden handcuffs at some of the classic companies there, but other than that, they wanna make you happy because it was so expensive to recruit you and get you in the door. They really don't wanna lose you because you can walk, down the street and work for the competitor instead. So here's the remote work situation. I'm gonna be controversial here and say, I actually think people should be in the office, if not full-time, at least part-time, because it was that realization coming out of COVID where I thought, well, I'm not here for the tech, I'm actually here for the people. So as soon as I could go back to the office, I went back to the office and I was happy to be there. But a lot of my coworkers had not come back, and because they preferred, it was more efficient for them to work at home. Now, when we went into the COVID thing, I think engineering overall was really good at pivoting, right? We were all good at just staying at home in our basement and continuing to work. We were super productive. I got a lot of stuff done. It wasn't necessarily as fun, but I think we were capable of doing that. And then a lot of people realized, well, actually, I can be really productive at home, and it's more convenient for me, and it suits my lifestyle better to be at home. And my argument to them was that they were being selfish, because they shouldn't come into the office for them. They should come into the office for me. I wanted them there, right? They were part of my community, and they were denying me the privilege of having a donut and a coffee with them. More importantly, they were denying their teams, right? So think about the junior people on the team, especially the people that joined during COVID. They have no idea about the larger issues of how things work, the technologies that they're dealing with. If you're working in an office situation, you hear conversations and you can listen in and learn and you can ask the right questions because at least you know what the questions are. If you're working alone at home because everybody on your team is doing the same, the only way that you can ask those questions is in meetings where if you're a junior or a new person, maybe you don't want to put yourself out there to ask these questions, or maybe you don't even know what to ask. Instead, you kind of need that osmosis education of learning things just because it's happening all around you instead. So think about your team and think about the team dynamics and think of that as a motivator to actually say, okay, well, yeah, it's great. I love the flexibility of working at home. I was still working 2 days a week at home when I was at Google, and it was great to have that sort of hybrid situation. But this is why I kind of feel like a lot of companies are right, that it's not just because they bought the real estate, it's because they want to build that sort of glue in a team where everybody learns from each other, and then they have this sort of loyalty and togetherness that keeps the team there and keeps the team caring about what it is we do for our products. Management is not for everybody, but I would suggest that if you are at all interested, make this one of the changes. Try to do some leadership in management. If nothing else, it educates you about what's going on that side of the wall so that you can learn more about that, and then you can decide whether that is something you want to do or not. I think one of the fantastic things about tech in general is that we don't have to manage people. I think in a lot of domains, this is how your career advances, and then you lead people. Well, the skills that got you the job are not necessarily the same skills that make you good at leading people that got that job, right? And it's not necessarily something we would enjoy, but if you don't do it, you don't really know whether you would enjoy it. It's one of the changes that I made that told me, okay, well, here's, these are the elements that I enjoy about coding, these are the elements that I enjoy about management and leadership, and there were a lot on both sides. So it was nice to sort of have the option and to know what those options were, and then make the decision later. Like I did management for several years, it went very well, I wouldn't mind doing it again, but then I made a decision to switch back to engineering because I could also do that. So try it out or don't. If you're happy doing engineering, that's great, but it's worth considering at least trying this if you have the option. Company sizes are interesting. I've worked for really big companies. I've worked for medium size, like 100 to 200 people, and I've worked for tiny startups. Big companies are great because in general, they're more stable. Companies do go away. I'll use Sun Microsystems as a great example. It did fantastically well through the 90s. And then sometime around 2000, the Titanic hit the iceberg and they spent the next 9 years going down, just steadily down. I'm talking like stock price. I've never known a company to do a reverse split before. They did a 1-for-4 stock split because their stock had gotten so cheap, it was about to become a penny stock. So they pumped it up 4x, and then it just continued to drop after that. They even changed the stock symbol, which I don't think was done in the history of Wall Street. I think they did it so that people didn't know how to sell their stock anymore. It was bad. So, okay, so big companies can go away, but they tend to not go away overnight unless they're called Enron. And that means that there's going to be a little bit more stability if that's what you need in your career or at this phase in your career. So that's certainly one advantage. Another advantage is you get to focus on a specific task. I am going to be a developer doing this, working on this technology for this product, or I'm going to do product management, or I'm going to do marketing, or whatever it is, as opposed to smaller companies where you may wear several hats at the same time, which is a different skill set. There's also the ability to switch between things. So it was nice at Google when I thought, well, I've done engineering and management for a while, let's try something new. So I went over into developer relations, and then I switched back and came back to engineering. And it was nice in a large company with lots of things going on that you could actually do that. Small companies can be more fun and exciting. Maybe it is fun to wear different hats and you're working on the business side, you're helping out the salespeople, and you're also writing some code over there, and you're also leading a couple of developers. All of that's really great. It's just a very different dynamic. There's a feeling of maybe passion and personal commitment that can be really fun. I would say the flip side, though, is there's also more of an incentive for companies to get into a death march situation because they could run out of money at any moment, and so everybody needs to work really hard. One of the negative experiences I had was in the .com startup that I worked at, where I learned what a death march was. Death march is when you need to work harder because we really need to hit this deadline, and then the deadline slips. Okay, well now we really need to hit the deadline because we're already late, so you need to work harder, and then pretty soon you're coming in every single weekend, and the deadline is basically doing a week-to-week slip, and you're never ever going to reach it. Like, just use the induction formula. You're never going to get there. And then either you're going to go out of business, or you're going to be hopefully acquired, or something is going to happen. Chances are you'll just quit, because death marches, don't do them, right? If you find yourself in a death march situation, the company needs to make a change, or maybe you need to make a personal career change. The other thing that I tried a lot of was contracting. I find that very nice in a personal sense, because it has flexibility. Like, you get to try new things, new technologies, new companies. Also, I don't need to buy into your business plan. I don't personally believe it, but it doesn't matter, because you're just paying me at the end of every week, which is really nice. But you don't get the personal commitment that you do by being an employee. So if you actually really like what they're doing, then maybe it makes more sense to be a part of the team instead of just being this mercenary. I find that life is not the same as work. It's important to understand what the things are that you want to do outside of work. This is how I got to the decision of actually becoming a student again, because I thought, yeah, I love the code. I could keep doing that forever, but I actually enjoy writing and some comedy as well, so why not try these other things as well? So spend a little bit of time outside of work and see what the things are that you would like to do besides just writing code. Or if you decide, no, actually what I really like to do is write code, fantastic, write some more code. I'm not saying you have to make a switch, but I am saying it's good to understand who you are and what it is you want to do, because that helps inform decisions that you can make in your career and in your life in general. What do you want to prioritize? And where do you want to go in the future? Do you want to keep learning? Do you want to keep working on this job, which is great? Do you want to make a big switch? Do you need to set aside money? Do you need to live more simply so that you have more options later on? I know a lot of people making really good compensation, and they kind of live to the level of their income as their income goes up, which is great, and it's working well for them. And it means they don't really have an option to do something else that doesn't pay as well, because they've sort of set up this limit that they're living to. If you live a little bit more simply, that you can build in a buffer, and then you have some options for later on. I would say we have time for questions, but I have no idea what time it is, and I'm thinking we don't. Thanks. Enjoy the conference.